Mariam was born in a small town where dreams were often limited by the weight of reality. From a young age, she learned that life demanded persistence, patience, and endless work. Her parents were simple folks struggling to provide even the basic necessities, and Mariam vowed she would never let her children feel that kind of poverty. She believed that a mother's love could be stronger than any hardship. Mariam married young to a kind but modest man, Ahmed. Together, they dreamed of a life where their children could have opportunities they never had. Their home was small, yet filled with warmth and laughter. Soon, Mariam gave birth to her first child, Sarah, followed by her second, Bilal. From the very beginning, Mariam poured her heart into raising them. Every day was a battle against financial strain. She worked multiple jobs, cleaning homes, sewing and selling handmade crafts in the local market. Her hands bore the marks of toil, yet she never complained. Evenings were the hardest. While the children slept, Mariam would sit by the dim light of a single bulb, mending clothes, calculating expenses, and dreaming of their future. She imagined Sarah studying in a prestigious school, Bilal becoming a doctor, and both of them building lives far better than hers. Every stitch she sewed, every coin she saved, was for that dream. Despite her exhaustion, Mariam never let the children feel her burden. She cooked their favorite meals, told them stories before bed, and wiped away their tears. Her love was silent but profound, a constant presence that shaped the children's hearts. One day, "My loves, you will fly high," she would whisper as she tucked them in, "and everything I do is so you can soar without fear." Years passed, and her sacrifices began to show results. Sarah excelled in school, her curiosity insatiable, while Bilal had a sharp mind for science. Neighbors would often admire Mariam, saying, "Such a hard-working mother, her children will surely reach the stars." Mariam smiled humbly, her eyes reflecting both pride and quiet sadness, for she knew that the path she paved would one day take her children far from home. As the children grew older, the tension between love and ambition became tangible. Bilal received a scholarship to study abroad, while Sarah secured a spot in a prestigious university overseas. Mariam's heart swelled with pride, yet a quiet ache settled deep within her chest. The home that once echoed with laughter now felt emptier with their departure imminent. The night before their departure, Mariam prepared a small feast, the air thick with unspoken emotions. She packed their bags meticulously, folding every shirt and wrapping every book with care. "You will succeed, my loves," she said, her voice trembling. "But never forget your roots. Never forget the hands that lifted you." On the morning of their departure, Mariam kissed each child goodbye at the airport. She held back tears, forcing a smile as they disappeared into the throng of travelers. Alone, she stood in the empty terminal, feeling a hollowness that no amount of hard work could fill. She whispered a prayer, hoping their dreams would take them to great heights, but fearing the silent loneliness that awaited her at home. Back in her small house, the walls felt too large, the silence unbearable. Mariam threw herself into work, believing that keeping busy would distract her from the emptiness. Yet, every night, she felt the quiet sting of absence, the empty chairs at the dinner table, the untouched toys, the laughter that no longer filled the rooms. She began writing letters, pouring her love and advice onto paper, sending them abroad with the hope that her children would read them. But as months passed, replies were rare, brief, and hurried. Mariam felt a pang of despair she could never voice. Winter came, harsh and unforgiving. Mariam's health, weakened by years of toil, began to falter. She brushed off the fatigue, refusing to burden her children with worry. "I am fine," she would tell herself, though her body ached, and nights of insomnia left her gasping for rest. The home, once filled with dreams and laughter, became a silent witness to her sacrifices. Neighbors began to notice her solitude. "She is a remarkable mother, but I fear for her health," one would say. Mariam would nod, smiling faintly, masking the growing pain in her chest. Her mind, however, was constantly occupied with her children's lives abroad. She imagined Sarah's laughter as she walked the university halls, Bilal's excitement at learning new things. Yet, for every image of their success, there was a shadow of fear. What if they forgot the woman who gave everything for them? Months turned into a year. Mariam's body grew frail, yet her spirit remained unbroken. She continued to send parcels, letters, and reminders of home, hoping her love would bridge the miles. But in quiet moments, she wept, clutching the letters she received in return, longing for a connection that seemed to drift further with every passing day. Her neighbors often brought food, sometimes coaxing her to rest, but Mariam's heart never allowed her to slow down. Every stitch she sewed, every chore she completed, was a testament to the love that refused to waver, even as her body weakened. "One day, they will return," she would whisper to herself, clutching a worn photograph of her children. "And all of this will have been worth it." The airplane had barely disappeared into the clouds when Mariam felt the weight of silence descend upon her small home. For the first time in her life, the rooms that had once echoed with laughter now felt like strangers. Every object, every corner, reminded her of the children who had grown and flown too far. Sarah and Bilal were pursuing their dreams abroad, as she had always wished, but the price of that dream was far heavier than anyone could imagine. Days blended into weeks. Mariam's mornings were spent completing chores and preparing parcels filled with home-cooked meals and handwritten letters. She poured her soul into each box, choosing each item as though it could somehow travel with her love across the oceans. But each letter she received in return felt cold and distant. "I'm busy with exams," Bilal wrote one time. "I'll call soon," Sarah promised in another. Soon never seemed to arrive. Mariam would sit by the window for hours, staring at the empty street outside, imagining the laughter that once filled it. Memories of bedtime stories, shared jokes, and warm embraces haunted her, blending with the quiet hum of loneliness. She tried to fill the void with work, cleaning, sewing, helping neighbors, but nothing could replace the absence of her children. Winter's chill deepened Mariam's solitude. The nights were long and bitter, and often she would wake from dreams of her children crying softly in the dark, yearning for her. She would sit up, clutching the thin blanket around her shoulders, whispering prayers for their safety and success. "May they be happy," she murmured. "May they never forget home. May they know I am always with them, even if they cannot see me." As months passed, Mariam's health began to decline. Her hands, once strong and steady, trembled while she cooked. Her back ached from endless years of work. She dismissed the pain, refusing to burden her children with worry. Each ache became a private burden, a secret sorrow she bore silently. "I am fine," she told herself with a trembling smile. But each day became a struggle to keep moving, to keep living in a world that felt emptier with every passing moment. Neighbors began to notice. "She looks so tired," one whispered. "She's giving too much of herself." But Mariam waved away concern, saying, "I am strong. I must be strong. My children's dreams depend on me." Yet deep inside, fear and despair gnawed at her heart. What if her children, busy with their lives abroad, forgot the sacrifices she had made? What if they never returned? Her letters became more urgent, more heartfelt. She wrote about her days, about the meals she cooked, about her quiet moments of longing. She poured all her love onto the pages, imagining that each word would wrap around her children's hearts and remind them of home. But replies were few and brief, often hastily written between classes, exams, and new friendships. The words hurt more than they healed. Mariam understood their busy lives, but loneliness had a way of echoing louder than understanding ever could. One cold evening, Mariam sat by the window watching snowflakes fall silently outside. She clutched a photograph of Sarah and Bilal from years ago, their faces bright with innocence and joy. Tears rolled down her cheeks, falling onto the worn photograph. "I have given you everything," she whispered, "and yet it feels as though I am invisible to you now." Days turned into months, and Mariam's body grew weaker. The neighbors begged her to see a doctor, but she delayed each visit, afraid of disrupting the children's lives with her troubles. "I am fine," she insisted. "Nothing can stop me from waiting for them." But her body betrayed her. Persistent fatigue, dizziness, and unrelenting pain became constant companions. Meanwhile, Sarah and Bilal were thriving abroad. Sarah was excelling in her university, surrounded by new friends and opportunities. Bilal was making remarkable progress in his studies, admired by professors for his brilliance. Their lives were full of promise. Yet the distance created an invisible wall between them and the mother who had built the foundation of their success. They rarely called. Messages were short, sometimes forgetting to ask about her health, sometimes unaware of the quiet sorrow accumulating thousands of miles away. Mariam's loneliness became a quiet torment. She walked the house, cleaning, cooking, and caring for herself with ritualistic precision. She could not bear to see neighbors worrying, so she smiled when visitors came, masking the ache in her heart. Nights were the hardest. She would sit in the dark, speaking to the photograph on the table, telling her children about her day, about her longing, about the empty chairs at the dining table. Her health continued to decline, unnoticed by the children who were caught up in their distant lives. What once were brief moments of sadness became annoying despair. Mariam began to feel the fragility of time. She realized that life had a cruel rhythm. She had given everything, yet the returns, her children's presence, their love, their care were delayed, and perhaps too late. Despite the physical and emotional toll, Mariam's love remained unwavering. She prayed for her children daily, sending her blessings across continents. "Be safe, my loves. Be happy, live well, and remember the home that will always be waiting for you." The words were a lifeline. Not for her children, they had their own worlds now, but for Mariam herself, a fragile thread holding her to life. Months turned into a year. Then too, Mariam's frailty became noticeable to the neighbors. They offered help, meals, and company, but Mariam refused to let anyone see the depth of her suffering. "I must endure," she said quietly. "My children are worth every tear, every ache, every lonely night." Yet inside, she feared that life would not allow her to see them again. As she sat by the window one evening, watching the sun set behind distant hills, Mariam clutched her chest in sudden pain. She leaned against the cold frame, whispering their names, Sarah, Bilal. She imagined them walking through the door, hearing her voice, holding her hands. But reality struck hard. The house remained silent, and the only response was the echo of her own whisper. Mariam's suffering continued in quiet solitude, each day a struggle to maintain hope. She began to realize that life's cruelest truth is that love alone cannot always bridge distance or prevent regret. Her heart ached not for herself, but for the absence of the children she had nurtured, sacrificed for, and dreamed of protecting. The letters remained her companions, the memories her solace, and her prayers the only bridge she could send across oceans. The days had grown shorter, the nights colder, and Mariam's once tireless body was now fragile and weary. Each breath, it felt heavier than the last, and each step across her small home required immense effort. She tried to maintain her routine, cleaning, cooking, and writing letters, but her hands trembled, her back ached, and her chest often tightened painfully. She continued to hope, always hope, that her children would call, that Sarah and Bill would remember her sacrifices, her tireless love. But the calls were rare, their messages brief, often filled with excuses about exams, work, or new friends. Mariam accepted this with a quiet pain, understanding that life abroad was demanding, but it did not make her heart ache any less. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the horizon, Mariam felt a deep, sharp pain in her chest. She leaned against the wall, clutching her heart, whispering, "My loves, I am waiting for you. Please come." Her body shivered, her breath shallow, but her thoughts were only of Sarah and Bill. She imagined their faces, their smiles, their laughter, images that both warmed her heart and tore it apart with longing. Neighbors noticed her struggling, knocking on her door with concern. "Mariam, you look unwell. Please let us call a doctor." Mariam smiled faintly, shaking her head. "I am fine. Truly I am fine. My children will return soon." The words were a fragile shield against the truth she could no longer deny. Her strength was fading. As days passed, Mariam's condition worsened. She grew weaker, her movements slower, her voice barely a whisper. Yet she persisted, insisting on preparing meals, cleaning the house, and sending letters, as if every task could somehow tether her children to her. Nights were filled with dreams of Sarah and Bill returning, of laughter filling the rooms once more, of hugs that could erase years of solitude. But each morning reality shattered those dreams, leaving Mariam alone with the ache of distance. One particularly cold night, Mariam sat by the window, looking out at the street bathed in silver moonlight. She held a letter she had written just that morning, filled with her love, advice, and blessings for her children. Her hand trembled as she wrote, but she continued, determined that her heart's message would reach them, even if she could not. "Remember your home, remember me, your mother who gave everything for you," she scribbled, tears falling onto the paper. The following morning, Mariam's health declined rapidly. Her neighbors, alarmed, rushed to help, but she gently refused their assistance. Go to your families," she whispered, a faint smile on her lips. "I am waiting for my children, only them." She sank into her chair, breathing shallowly, her body failing, but her heart still beating with love that spanned continents. Meanwhile, Sarah and Bill were caught in their own worlds abroad. Exams, social life, and new opportunities had consumed their attention. Occasionally they thought of their mother, vaguely remembering her letters, her meals, her sacrifices, but life moved fast, and distance had dulled the immediacy of her presence. It was only when a neighbor's call reached them that reality struck, a voice trembling. "Your mother, she is very ill. You should come home." The flight home was a blur. Both Sarah and Bill sat in silence, the weight of guilt pressing down on them with every mile closer to home. They imagined what they might find. Would she be waiting, smiling, or neither wanted to consider the alternative? Their hearts pounded with anticipation, fear, and remorse for all the days they had been absent, the letters they had barely replied to, the moments of her life they had missed. When they arrived, the house was eerily quiet. The familiar rooms smelled faintly of spices and old wood. Then they saw her Mariam lying peacefully in her bed, her frail body draped in a simple shawl, her face serene yet touched with the sorrow of years spent waiting. The sight struck them with unbearable grief. Their mother, who had given them everything, was no longer the vibrant woman they remembered. She had endured loneliness, hardship, and illness alone. Tears flowed freely as Sarah and Bill approached her side. They gently held her hands, feeling the frailty of life that had once been so strong. "Mother, we're here," Sarah whispered, her voice breaking. Bill knelt beside her, pressing his forehead to hers, sobbing quietly. Mariam's eyes fluttered open slightly, a faint smile gracing her lips. "My children, you came," she murmured weakly, but time, cruel and unforgiving, had run its course. Mariam's breathing grew shallow, her pulse fading, yet her heart overflowed with love for the children who had finally returned. She whispered their names softly, a blessing and farewell, a final gift of love. "Live well, my loves, always remember your mother." With those words, her body relaxed, her spirit departing silently, leaving behind the home she had filled with love and sacrifice. Sarah and Bill collapsed beside her, their sobs echoing through the silent house. Guilt and sorrow overwhelmed them, for they had taken their mother's presence for granted, delayed their return, and allowed distance to blind them to her struggles. Each tear they shed was a testament to regret, a longing to turn back time, to hold her one last time, to tell her they loved her. The neighbors gathered, offering comfort, but nothing could ease the ache of loss. The children sat in silence for hours, recounting memories, whispering apologies, and holding on to the warmth that lingered in the room, the faint scent of home, the echo of laughter, the imprint of a mother's tireless love. In the weeks that followed, Sarah and Bill all faced the painful reality of their mother's absence. Her letters, photographs, and belongings became sacred relics, reminders of a love that had transcended hardship, distance, and even death. They vowed never to forget her sacrifices, her lessons, and the unwavering love that had shaped their lives. Maryam's story became a lesson etched in their hearts, that a mother's love is patient, enduring, and often silent, but when lost, it leaves a void that no achievement, distance, or time can ever fill. Her children carried forward her legacy, honoring her memory by living with the values she had instilled. But the ache of the goodbye that came too late remained a wound deep, tender, and unforgettable. Even in death, Maryam's love remained a guiding light for Sarah and Bill, a reminder that love given selflessly never truly leaves, even if the giver departs. And though they had arrived too late to hold her hand one last time, her spirit lingered in every corner of the home, whispering blessings and love, a testament to a mother whose life was defined by sacrifice and a heart too vast to measure.